Hello there, how are you? I hope that you are good. Welcome to the Abuti Rams Show, where we get to speak to business leaders and leaders in society who could converse with us about some of the challenges that we have and also come up with solutions and give us some tips on how to actually navigate the entrepreneurship space, the leadership space, or even the business space. I'm your host, Abuti Rams, and today is not different. We have a very bright and very strong leader who has been in the corporate world for the longest of time, by the name of Mr Bonang Mohale. If you are watching this, make sure that you please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also like and share with your friends so that we can spread the good news and make sure that people reach out to this platform which we call Abuti Rams Live. Thank you so much. Mr Mohale, thank you so much for being part of Abuti Rams. Sure. We are now under lockdown level 1. How has it been for you?
I must say that first, when it was introduced, we understood that it is about saving lives and preserving livelihoods.
Sure.
This pandemic has been unprecedented,
sure,
unrelenting, and uncertain.
Sure.
But it has taught me personally that I can reconnect with family, especially my key relationships. But at the same time, work from home and be more productive because I can squeeze in, on average, 6 meetings a day rather than traveling from one place to the other, where on average it's about 3. And then lastly, I think what it has done for the world, it has changed everything. It has changed the way we work.
Yes.
The way we engage, interact, and interface with other people, the way we visit, the way we pray and worship, the way we celebrate.
Sure.
And in fact, instead of thinking about and hankering to the old normal and wishing for a new normal, I think it gives us an opportunity to co-create and co-craft a better normal because it has probably demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt and revealed the fissures, the inequalities, the challenges that are facing us as a people with great natural endowments. When you listen to the World Health Organization, and it says we need to do at least 4 things to stay alive. Okay. 1, social distancing. Number 2, some sort of self-quarantine. Basic hygiene, like washing your hands with running water for no less than 20 seconds with soap, and then wear a mask. And if I start with the mask, the majority of our people can't even afford to buy a mask. There are 16 million people that were gainfully employed before COVID.
Sure.
We lost 3 million jobs, 2.2 million just in the last quarter.
And that was before COVID?
Yes, absolutely. So during COVID, in fact, we have lost a total of about 3 million jobs.
And now in the third quarter?
But if you think about it, only 18 million people are gainfully employed. In fact, 16 million people gainfully employed, 18 million people on social security. We now add another 5.6 million people who are now getting the 350 extra social grants.
Sure,
so you can see that very quickly we are becoming a nation of consumers, but a nation that is overly dependent on social security instead of investing in infrastructure, instead of investing in the productive side of the economy. So you can see that our people can't afford to buy masks, but how do you practice social distancing in Soweto where there's 3.5 million people? A population that is bigger than the countries of Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Swaziland. A majority of those houses are 4-roomed houses with an average of 5 people in a house. If you reserve 1 bedroom for the parents, so there'll be 1 bedroom for the girls. Then it means the boys will sleep in the dining room. So they have to be up before everybody else wakes up. So it makes a mockery of trying to practice some social distancing. And if you've been exposed to somebody who's COVID positive or been in the presence in the office where somebody has tested positive, how do you go home and practice social distancing? Lastly, how do you even think of social distancing in Alexander, where there's anything from 350,000 to 750,000 people in an area of 6 square kilometers? I think the population of Alexandra today, unofficially, is approximating 1 million. So you can see that there's an average of 6 shacks per yard. So we are literally like sardines, one on top of the other. Lastly, we as companies, we then say to our people, no, you must go and work from home to try and stay safe.
Sure.
But Stats SAA tells us that no more than 10.4 million of households have direct access to the internet. So the majority of our people don't have Wi-Fi.
Sure.
They can't work from home.
Sure.
A majority of them don't even have the laptop or the iPads. You're lucky in Soweto if there's one cell phone per household, and if that cell phone, it's a smartphone. So even if you give your own employees a laptop and a smartphone and say, go and work from home, 13.5 million South Africans commute to and from work by taxi, and these taxis are not yet safe, are not yet accessible, and they are not yet affordable. So when you give them this laptop and the smartphone, is the surest way of ensuring that it gets confiscated. Lastly, I think we need to really reflect about what this pandemic has taught us so that we can change our behaviors, but also our governments can be better held more accountable. Instead of just demanding houses and bridges and infrastructure, we now need to be saying to them, we want access to good healthcare.
Yes.
We want water in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo and Mpumalanga, where the majority of the schools are still pit latrine toilets. So you can see that we are really in a spot of bother. And as if that's not enough, now the president announces this socio-economic stimulus package of 500 billion. The same month, the people who call themselves our leaders are now stealing this money. They are literally stealing from the poor, the hungry, the sick, and the dying. So instead of now sending our best soldiers, frontline workers, to go and look after you and me, to make sure that we hold this pandemic at bay, we now give them PPE equipment, masks, that are not compliant with the N95 specifications. So we give them equipment that is designed to kill them. So I don't know what we are going to do as a people with great natural endowments, but we are really in a spot of bother. And let me conclude by saying, remember the pandemic found us already prostate, face down, finished, because we had just recovered from a technical recession. We just recovered from a Moody's joining the other two rating agencies, rating us below investment grade. In fact, we were just thinking that we are recovering from the 9 wasted years of state capture, where people were stealing at an industrial scale and feeding from the trough. So I couldn't think of a time in South Africa where so many things have conspired, come together simultaneously, concurrently, and in parallel to make sure that we are at our most weakest and most vulnerable at the time that we know that sustainability and indeed the higher form, which is resilience in Africa, it's much more than the food, energy, water nexus.
Dr. Mohale just painted a very gory and bleak picture of the state of the nation. I think you just delivered the state of the nation address in our platform. But something that I want to pick up from your conversation right now, that even before the pandemic, we had just coming from a technical recession, and now you've also spoken about the 9 wasted years. To you, it might make a whole lot of sense to people in the business world. We are sitting with entrepreneurs in the townships. We are sitting with people on the ground. What does the 9 wasted years mean to them? Because they have been seeing to a certain level of service delivery happen in their townships and whatever. And what does it mean for the small entrepreneur on the ground, and how those 9 wasted years actually affected their businesses, as small as they are?
So what it means to you as a small and medium enterprise, and as an aspirant entrepreneur, or maybe a practicing entrepreneur, if you live in the township of Tsepiso, in Mfuleni municipality, raw sewage is pouring not only in the Vaal water systems, but into your own yard, and it floods the entire yard where your children have to walk literally on bricks from the kitchen to the toilet. What it means is that you can't invite other people to come and look at your goods and services from home when the majority of people are working from home because it has just become unsafe. What it means if you're an entrepreneur in black townships in Alexander, in Langanyanga, Guguletu, Mondlo, and Nkandla, is that the 6 months, now going to 8 months, when we've been in lockdown, you are unable to ply your wares and transact with other small and medium enterprises.
Sure.
Because we were literally locked down, level 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now it's beginning to open up a little bit. But what it also means is that the economy has taken large resources in terms of rands and used them for the 9 wasted years. In 4 years, we have lost 1.4 trillion South African rands. That's 2/3 of what the South African Revenue Service collects in a year from companies, from PAYE, and indeed from VAT. That money is out of the economy. It is in the pockets of the top state capture miscreants that must go to jail. What it means is that for the 9 wasted years, instead of investing in our own people, we have been siphoning off on average 100 billion just to the 2 Zupta families. And yet we say to them, we need to continue to create our own businesses so that we can employ our own children. Because it's madness to continue to make babies and send them to a different neighborhood. If you're in Alexander, across the bridge to the richest square mile in Sentin to say, go and look for a job from somebody else on your knees, when we could have created this ourselves. There's an Alexander Mall. There's businesses in Alexander. There's churches in Alexander. There's economic activity in Alexander. We should be circulating the black rand amongst ourselves. Lastly, and I think which is more important for me, is the fact that we as business people now recognize that we are suffering from the lowest levels since the Second World War of confidence, of trust, and on hope.
Yes.
So when people say, I don't have confidence, trust, and hope, they are not asking you for another plan, especially because we've got 6 other plans.
Sure.
We are in the middle of executing on the NDP 2030.
Yeah.
We still have another 10 years to go. In the middle of doing and executing, we create another plan, now called Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. But we know that we just had another plan in 2010 called the New Growth Path that promised 4 things: reindustrialization, localization, beneficiation, and the creation of black industrialists.
Yeah.
We are not creating black industrialists in large numbers, but we are creating thieves in large numbers, because today is very difficult to find an honest civil servant and an honest politician.
Yeah.
And under those circumstances, how then do we find a role for big business? How do we find a role for small and medium enterprise? But also, how do we find a role for civil society? And let me start with civil society. You see, we've got the best constitution in the world. And not the main body of the constitution, but just the preamble of the constitution implores you and I to recognize the past injustices.
Sure.
It mandates us to fix those past injustices. It's not asking us 26 years into democracy to be saying, but apartheid was bad for us. It excluded our people from the economic mainstream. It's not asking you and I to say, but we as guerrillas and SMK activists, we used to cross illegally into neighboring countries and into frontline states. It requires of us to say, now that you know, as an MK activist, that you used to cross the border illegally, in 26 years, you must have plugged that hole.
Sure.
In 26 years, you must make sure that our borders are safe. In 26 years, you need to make sure that you have at least a sense of who is in the country, the numbers, so that you can better plan for healthcare, for education, but also for safety and security. It requires you to say, are we not exposed? But the truth of the matter is that we get embarrassed every day. It wasn't al-Bashir who came into the country and just kind of left without us knowing.
Sure.
Now we've got a husband and wife, Bushiri, with the intelligence supposedly awake and eyes wide open.
Sure.
With the Department of Home Affairs looking after the 15 passports that this couple have, but the same photograph. And your systems are not telling you that the same photograph is on 15 passports. How do we feel safe at night? How do the people in Soweto go to bed peacefully, knowing that there are people amongst us that are undocumented? There are people who are doing businesses and we don't know where they come from and what their intent is, that they are not acting in the best interest of South Africa Inc. But in the, again, preamble of the Constitution, it says all of us must work hard to make sure that we deliver this thing called social justice. That equality, of course, is a dream and a pipeline, but at least we need to be seen to be just and equitable and fair in the way we give opportunities. It says all of us must work hard to make sure that the 59.3 million South Africans reach their potential, not their fullest potential. It says all of us must work hard to improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people, especially those that are less fortunate than ourselves. In business, in simple terms, we say it's about taking the bottom half and bringing them into the middle class. Because when people have nothing to lose, they will burn the library, they will burn the fire engine, knowing fully well that at 2 o'clock in the morning, their significant other might need that ambulance to go and deliver at the nearest hospital. So for me, I think it demonstrates that we need to go back to the founding fathers' intent. When all of us were wholesome, when all of us were working in the best interest of South Africa Incorporated. We were successful because we had a common enemy, and that common enemy was called apartheid. We were successful because we acted in this thing called common purpose for the common good, acting in the best interest of South Africa, not my own best interest. My grandmother used to say, to act in your own interest, you need to first act in the best interest of others. But what we are seeing really from our leaders, it's not that demonstration. How then do we find a new common enemy so that all of us, 59.3 million South Africans, are looking in the same direction and say this too will pass, that we will prevail, that when the pandemic is over, that we'll still remain as a nation. Blue skies, African sunshine, to give effect to the South Africa of Rolihlahla, Nelson Mandela's dreams, for all of us to realize the South Africa that we've been praying for. Is that new common enemy stubbornly high levels of unemployment that then lead to increasing levels of poverty, that then lead to increasing levels of inequality? Or maybe, because we have to think slightly more longer term, is it education? Because education can help you transcend social classes. Education gives you hope that you can be born in an informal settlement, but after 23 years of hard work and application, you can afford a house in the leafy suburbs of Bryanston. Not because you won a tender, but because you have earned it, you deserve it, and you can afford it. Because when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without the persistent crusade. How do we extend hope? How do we give trust? How do we ensure that we restore the confidence that our people have lost when all around us things are falling apart and the center is not holding?
Is the current political system or the political leaders right now, are they able to help us to regain that hope? And that is one part of my question. Because when you look at the transition from 2017 ANC elections, national elections that they had, and elected the current leader who promised us of a new dawn, which to a certain extent, the population at large haven't felt the new dawn, unless if it was a new dawn that it is there for politicians alone. And if you look at the transition from that political leadership, from the part where you are then saying there has been 9 wasted years. In the 9 wasted years, we had the same leaders who were deputies. Our current leader was a deputy within the 9 wasted years. And in those 9 wasted years, he was a leader of business. When you look at the SOEs and the rampant corruption that actually took place, it was still under the same leadership that we have right now, our leader as being the president. And if you look at it from that angle and then say, we are in 2020 right now and we have the same leader who was in the 9 wasted years, we shouldn't, take him out of the picture. He was part of the picture and promised us a new dawn. When you look at the type of political leadership, is it painting a better picture or a bleak picture for us as an economy? Number 2, as young people of this country, looking at our leaders and looking at where this country is going, is it painting a good or a bleak picture?
So you see, what drives the share price is rumor and speculation.
Okay.
When people have confidence, they invest more, they do more, they take more risks.
Sure.
So on the 19th of December 2017, we were gifted President Madamela Ramaphosa, and he's trying his utmost. He's the best leader that we have at the moment. But the people around him and the messages and the strategic conversations we are having are not instilling confidence. For instance, we come in with this new strategy of the new dawn of growth and unity. Unity for the party. Now in 100 years, you will never be able to achieve and reconcile unity in the party when you have thieves on the one hand. And on the other hand, you've got people like President Madamela Ramaphosa who have chosen to be on the side of the angels. How do you reconcile people who are committed to rooting out and defeating state capture and those that are using that money to fight back and make sure that they don't go to jail? You can see that it's irreconcilable. Secondly, they take number of resolutions. And most of these people who call themselves our leaders are saying, please implement the resolutions of the 54th Congress. Elective Conference of the ANC in Nasrec. Please implement them. Take one resolution. The resolution says, if you are a leader of the ANC and you have been formally charged with corruption,
step aside.
You must step aside with immediate effect.
Sure.
From your political office, but also from your civic duties. That's what it says.
Sure.
Today, almost 2 years into the presidency of Madamela Ramaphosa, there are a number of leaders that have been formally charged with corruption. They're still in their jobs. How do you instill confidence? How do you instill confidence when, instead of just doing the basic things, the low-hanging fruit,
sure,
focusing on growth so that we can talk about the redistribution of wealth, not the redistribution of poverty. But in the last 10 years, this economy has never grown beyond 3 percentage points. The NDP 2030 sure. says we need to grow at 5.4% yeah. At the higher end to be able to absorb the 180,000 young graduates that get onto the job market, often with inappropriate skills. How do we instill confidence when we as business people are saying, first and foremost, under these circumstances, the number one thing that we have to do in a pandemic is to survive. Because if you can survive, you're already profitable. Because there are a lot of companies that are going to die. The second thing we are saying as business, maybe the second thing that we need to do is to bring about this notion of shared value. Because what is keeping boards awake in the 21st century is the fact that corporate decision-making should not be consistent only with the whims of the shareholders, but with a broader stakeholder community. The society where you come from, the community where you are located, including the commitments made by the executives. Thirdly, we need to say, as a company, do no harm. Companies have resources, disproportionate voice. They can deliver mega projects on time, on budget, and in full. And they even have a name for it. It's called project management. Government is demonstrating in the last 26 years that they are failing to do that. Because every single sold through one of the major projects to the multi-product pipeline, new multi-product pipeline, which was budgeted at 7, delivered at 29 billion. To Midwip, Nkusile and Ingula, budgeted at 30, now at 57 billion, and it's still not complete, and it's not delivering what it is designed to do. We spend more money to fortify our electricity supply, but the security of supply is the weakest it has been, and yet the money has been spent. We have an opportunity to order the biggest 1,064 locomotives through Transnet. I exclude the Prasa ones that they ran very quickly to Spain, and they brought locomotives that are not up to specs, too tall for our systems. I exclude that. 1,064 locomotives. When all these trains that you find here of Metro Rail have been made here in Brakpan with union courage.
Goodness. But
we give that tender to South China Rail because it's easy to hide the money offshore than to give it to you. And every single through one of those political leaders say we are committed to broad-based black economic empowerment. We are committed to localization. We are committed to beneficiation. And in fact, we say we are proudly South African, but we externalize the biggest order. So you can see that we need to do no harm as businesses because we have the wherewithal that our people must come to work every day with 10 fingers at the end of their 2 hands and go back every afternoon complete and safe and whole and wholesome. That's the job of business. But doing no harm sounds a bit passive. But I think what business needs to do as compatriots and as patriotic business, they need to improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people. Now that's more active. Then it means we need to really interrogate that how come that 26 years into democracy, we are still paying women 75% of what we pay men for work of equal value. And gender equality is still a pipe dream. That women are 51% of the population, and yet their representations in positions of leadership, and C-suite I'm talking about, is less than 24%. African women, 4%, 26 years into democracy. What are we going to blame now? How is it that 26 years into democracy, we are not even allowing ourselves to look back and say we have eliminated rural schools where there are 2 classes in 1 classroom, that the mud schools are gone, that the pit latrines where Michael Komape and Lumka Hanke have, the 5-year-olds, have died sad, tragic and regrettable deaths. When business has joined hands with government and said, we'll spend our own money to make sure that we eliminate these pit latrines. But when you look at the money that we have wasted, it's not just opportunity costs. It's money that has just been taken out of the economy. 2 last ones for me. It's about ensuring that we continue to create jobs in large numbers so that our people can get their self-worth back, their self-esteem. Because all of us want the same things for our children. There is no pride in waking up at 4 in the morning to go to a queue looking for a social grant, when all we want is to be able to provide for our own children. Lastly, I think we need to take this notion of education much more seriously, grow our own timber. We used to have artisans, millwrights, fitters and tanners, electricians, and lift mechanics. We used to call that apprenticeship programs. We used to have teachers training colleges, nurses training colleges. And we didn't learn from countries like Germany that not everybody needs to go to university. When we became free, only 7% of South Africans went to institutions of higher learning. We increased that to 11%. But we killed everything else. That's why we had a stampede at the University of Johannesburg, because there are no more outlets, no other careers. All of us want to be academics. And yet in Germany, you don't even need what we call grade 12 or standard 10 or matric in our days. At standard 8, they take you, you go and become a motor mechanic. And look at the best cars in the world. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen, all of them are made in Germany. This is the country that is the world leader in solar energy, and yet they've got 3 months of the sun in a year. We've got 228 days of blue skies and African sunshine, and yet we are not world authorities on solar. We have 3 of the mightiest rivers in the world, including the mighty Zambezi that pummels at the Vic Falls at probably 530,000 cubic feet, enough to generate hydroelectric power for the 1.3 billion people in the continent, 55 countries that speak 2,000 languages with 30.3 square million kilometers of pristine coastline, and export the rest to Europe. And yet we are not talking about hydroelectric power. It took us 10 years to come up with a fantastic program of independent power producers using renewables. But because of politics, because of ideology, we did the first tranche, the second, the third, and the price has come down by 90% everywhere else in the world. And in the last 6 years, we're not signing the new IPPs to make sure that they can be connected to the grid, when 90% of our electricity still comes from fossil fuel along Mpumalanga, all of it coal-fired power stations. And we're not even using the latest technology. And yet we had the biggest investment in the world. We are the 4th largest utility in the world, but we're not behaving as such. Today, even when we say we've got the pandemic, our people need to be safe, we switch off the electricity at the time that they're working from home. We switch off the electricity and they're not able to pump water so that they can wash their hands with running water. So you can see that most of our problems are actually self-created, self-inflicted harm, where we cut our own nose to spite our own face. I think we need the new cadre of leadership. We need to have critical, crucial, but nonetheless courageous conversations that says, how do we elect these leaders that don't even know the difference between income and cash? When we've had people in small and medium enterprises that have run their own businesses during apartheid days, Dr. Richard Maponya, E.T. Chabalala, Dr. Sam Mutsonyane, who were millionaires in the 1960s. When P.W. Water wanted to come and visit Soweto, would sleep in their homes in the middle of the night because they didn't want to publicize it. And yet these people are not asked to be economic advisors in the Department of Small Business Development. We're not asking these people to be ministers because they've run a fish and chip shop. But we put loyalty to the party rather than technical competence before everything else. No wonder, as a people with great natural endowments, we are backwards in terms of savings. We are backwards in terms of new jobs created by small and medium enterprises compared to our BRICS counterparts. Our savings level is below 15 percentage points. In BRICS countries, it's north of 50 percentage points. The percentage created by SMEs in new jobs is north of 60 percentage points in the BRICS countries. With us, again, less than 15 percentage points. So you can see that we have lessons everywhere else in the world. We're closing our eyes and ears from learning from them. We look at China and say, no, but they are communist. Not knowing that below the central command, they are as capitalist as you can get. Look at the consumption of major brands. Today, in terms of energy, in terms of oil, in terms of crude, but in terms of just fast-moving consumer goods, China has become the greatest consumer, more than the United States of America, that has 330 million people, with 1.4 billion people. So you can see that as a people, we are not really thinking strategically to say, what can we do to make sure that we give our people more than just confidence, extend trust, and give them hope by the actions that we do. It was General George Patton who said, great wars are won by good execution, not great plans. Because good execution will save even a mediocre plan. So what South Africa needs now, it's not another plan. We had a Skiza. We had the 14-point plan. It's doing, it's execution. Everywhere you look, we have become poorer today than we were when we inherited this administration in 1994. All we had to do was just perform planned and preventative maintenance at Transnet, at PRASA, at Metro Rail, at Eskom, at Dinel, at South African Express Airways. But pilots are toying because for the last 5 months, they've not been paid. And yet, these state-owned enterprises keep coming back to government like unrehabilitated alcoholics asking for annual bailouts.
Yeah.
We're not running them commercially. We have confused the dual mandate of development and commercial. And yet the managers that we put in those places should be able to hold two conflicting ideas in their minds and still be able to function. Why is it either or? Why can't it be both and together at the same time, concurrently, simultaneously, in parallel? Because in other countries like Singapore and Malaysia, and including China, we have seen that they can do that. Why don't we take the example that in China, the leadership in China, you have to be a graduate, you must have a demonstrable track record, you must come in to contribute. We put in people to be municipal managers in more than 300 municipalities. 26 years into democracy, we then say, no, but we must send them to school because not all of them are CASAs. But how did we appoint them in the first place? Because there were standards. When we were talking about affirmative action and broad-based black economic empowerment before it was amended in 2003, we were vigorously defending our detractors by saying, no, by giving these jobs to black people, you are not going to lower the standards. We addressed some contentious issues around affirmative action.
Yeah.
We were vociferous. We stood on mountaintops to say we are all created in the image of God and we are equal. People given an opportunity can rise up to meet the challenges. But what we have done, we have eroded that confidence. We have eroded that trust. We have put in people that even we don't trust to manage our own spaza shops in our own backyard. But we have said they must run the more than 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies.
Mr. Mohale, I think you have very strong, arguments that you are putting, forth. And because of time, I mean, we are running out of time right now. And I'm looking at the strong points that you are putting up, and with so much passion, And I'm saying, where are these leaders in government? Where are these leaders? If you were given an opportunity to lead South Africa today, one, how will you stimulate the township economy that has been overtaken right now by foreign nationals? One. Two, how do you help build confidence back into society and trust into society if you were given this position as a leader of the country?
So to restore confidence, extend trust, and give our people hope, number one, I would start with the top state capture miscreants and make sure that they are arrested, convicted, and go to jail. It's a major confidence booster. Sure. It says we are totally committed to rooting out and defeating state capture.
Sure.
Number two, I will then say, how come that 70% of our revenue goes to salaries of public servants and to servicing debt and to social security? 70%. We are left with only 30% to run the economy and to invest in infrastructure and on the productive side of the economy. The math doesn't add up. So I will reduce the public sector wage bill. 2010, ESCOM had 32,000 employees. During the years of state capture, it went up to 48,000. Yeah. And net delivery came down because we're creating cadres rather than effective and efficient managers. People that are not committed to delivering service to their own. That's what we struggled for. Thirdly, what I would do, I would say, let's focus really on growing this economy. Because for the last 10 years, the growth is not meeting our own expectations. The last 3 years, we're not reaching 2% GDP growth. And yet, our population growth is 1.5%. So if you are growing by less than 1.5%, which is the equivalent of the population growth, then it means you are going backwards. Sure. In fact, the South Africans' wealth has been going backwards. Their discretionary purchasing power has been going backwards. Fourthly, I would say we need to create jobs in large numbers where they are needed. We need more doctors, we need more nurses, people that can deliver service. We need more teachers. And we don't have to abdicate that responsibility and outsource it to a union. It is the job of government. It is the job of the minister. It is the job of the DGs. Today, you find a teacher that has 30 years of experience as a principal. But because a youngster is a member of SATU, comes in to become a boss of this 30-year-old, how does that instill confidence? How does that extend trust? That's why things are indeed falling apart. Lastly, I think what we'll do is to make sure that having grown the economy, increased the number of jobs, that we invest in small and medium enterprises. Okay. In black businesses, in women-owned businesses, in youth-owned businesses. Why is it that we haven't reversed the spatial apartheid planning? Most black people like you and I still live on average 40 kilometers away from where we work. Sure. It takes us on average 40 minutes to come to these places of work. And we spend on average 40% of our hard-earned cash just on transportation. If we include food, there's 70% of our wages gone. So how can these people be expected to even save? So you can see that we are really not focusing on things that genuinely matter. Here's the last one, just for a good measure. On the 27th of April 1994, when we became free, and on the 10th of May, when we inaugurated our first democratically elected president, Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, we said we are going to reverse the 350 years of colonialism, reverse the 98 years of separate development, reverse the 48 years of institutionalized apartheid. And yet we did nothing about land. Absolutely nothing. In fact, of the 400 MPs in that first cabinet, the one that had the smallest budget, with no permanent land judge, was the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestries. Up until today, still doesn't have a permanent land judge. And yet you and I know there is no possession better than land. Because land is the primary form of production. When people don't have land, they can't even leverage this asset class to go and borrow money from the bank so that they can start their own businesses. One of the most biggest injustices is to young people to send them to school and say, start your own businesses. And people have bright ideas. Sure. They don't have the 100,000 rand to start a business. If they do, it takes them 2 years to register that businesses through CIPC, to get tax clearance, and then BE certificate, all of that. Compare that with Singapore. It takes you 2 hours to open a new business in Singapore. And in Singapore, they're very clear. If you bring in a new piece of legislation, you must at the same time tell us which one we must take out, because we don't want to end up with 3,000 pieces of legislation. In our first 5 years of being free, we introduced 109 new pieces of legislation. But we left the ones that we found there. Most of them still apartheid legislation. Even today, we are still using apartheid legislation 26 years into democracy. So I think for me, we need to make sure that we give the current leadership, the youth, not future leaders, the tools to be able to lead and the confidence, because nobody learns to swim just by reading a textbook. At some stage, you have to put your big toe into the cold water. Young people need to be given an opportunity to experiment with their own companies. They need to be given opportunities to run big companies in the safety of systems and processes in big companies. They need to be given an opportunity to work with experienced leaders that have been there, done that, have been managers themselves for 20 years, so that they learn under their tutelage, under their arm, so that they don't make the mistakes that their people made. It took me 20 years to move from being a rep to being on the board of a serious company. We want young people to take half that, if not less, because we're counseling, coaching, and holding them by the hand. That's what it means when we talk about coaching on the job, mentorship outside of somebody who works with you, but also sponsorship, to make sure that there's somebody who's heavily invested in your upwards and forwards mobility, who knows more about your accomplishment than anybody else and can speak for you in your absence when they're looking for a general manager to say, you know what, Shebanta, he has been here. Every year we give him 5 things to do. He over-delivers by 7. He's ahead of his budget, and we're only in November, and our year ends on the 28th of February the next year. That's that sponsorship. That's it.
Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. If you've been watching this show, Mr Mohale has been very strong, and I think you have felt even in his passion from the voice that you were just projecting as well. But I think it is up to us as South Africans to then say, what do we do on the ground if we are having leaders who are actually failing with so many policies and strategies and so many plans that we have? It is at the end of the day up to you as a South African now to come up with solutions from where you are right now and find innovative ways to come out. And I think a black nation, especially the majority of this nation, have always come out of the most difficult times. And I believe that moving forward, we could really collaborate and work together, make sure that we come up with innovative and practical solutions for us. And you've been watching Abuti Rams live. Thank you so much. And now we change the show to Abuti Rams Show. So thank you so much for being part of us with this journey that we have taken for a year now. And we look forward to having more informative, more insightful, very vigorous conversations about the economy, about business, about the politics of things, and also about leadership in society as well. So if you are watching it, please make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you share with your friends and your families, but also make sure that you like so that we can get more people to know about the platform and to learn more about business and the opportunities that are there for us in South Africa and also in the continent at large. You've been watching Abuti Rams Show. Thank you.